All right, up for my next project is going to be this Macchi C.202 Folgore. And I got some extras, as you can see here. And kind of this video, we'll kind of go over plans for the project. We'll go over the kit itself. We'll go over some of the aftermarket and compare it to some of the kit parts, detail-wise. And we'll go through some references and talk about kind of which scheme I'm going to do. I have an extensive decal set here. This has 35 different models of the 202 that we can set up and build. So we'll talk about that a little bit and just kind of give the general overview of this kit that was tooled in 1997 by Hasegawa. So let me do a little clear up. We'll open up the box and check out the sprues, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so as I mentioned, this boxing of Hasegawa's Macchi is 1997, I believe. And it's a pretty good kit. I built one of these in the past. It's typical kind of 1990s Hasegawa. This is actually a later release, where they released it in 2008 again. So we'll pop this bad boy open. I have opened the bag already, just so you don't have to see me struggling with opening the bag like I do on most YouTube videos. So I'm just not going to deal with that. I will give one gripe. I love Hasegawa kits. I buy a lot of them. Whenever I see them, I screw them up. But my one gripe with them is that they just kind of throw everything in one bag. And Hasegawa plastic, if you've never used it before, it's a wonderful plastic, but it can be a little brittle. So when they throw it in these bags like this, you do run the risk of parts getting broken, taking off the sprue, all that kind of stuff. I opened it immediately because I just wanted to make sure that the clear parts were okay, and then upon inspection there was some issues. So I'll explain that as we get to it. Basically, we'll get these bags open here. Throw some of these off to the side, and we'll go sprue by sprue. So the main sprue has a fuselage on it, and tail planes, and some landing gear parts, and air intakes, and stuff like that. But Hasegawa plastic is very crisp. The panel lines are very fine. The detail is pretty good. I like rivets on planes. I wish there were more of them, either raised or recessed. There are some recessed rivets around the cockpit area where they'd be, but definitely, I'm still deciding whether I'm going to add extra rivets with a ponce wheel, but I think it adds that little extra to it. But everything looks very nice and crisp and typical Hasegawa, this light gray plastic. So far this sprue looks pretty good. There's a couple very tiny pieces down here which will be kind of interesting to remove off the sprue without messing them up. But everything else looks pretty good. One piece molded tail wheel. This is the insert for the machine guns in the nose. These are their version of pitot tubes and venturi tubes and that kind of stuff. This is the type where you're going to build up the cockpit walls inside the fuselage and add them in later. Let's move to the next sprue here. The next sprue has most of the cockpit on it. Cockpit walls, cockpit floor, instrument panel, air intake for the bottom, wings. We'll need to do some research on our particular model because some C202s, they remove the machine gun port on the wings and they just use the two on the top. I just don't remember off the top of my head if the one I'm planning on doing has these removed or if they just have all four or just the cannons or machine guns in the nose. Instrument panel is pretty well detailed right out of the box, but always more detail is nice. Sidewall fuselage detail for the inside looks pretty good with all the ribbing. The floor looks all right. There's a few ejector pin marks in some obvious places here. They're on the these little like footrests underneath the rudder pedals, but none in the sidewalls that I can see. None in the seat. Seat's a little soft and chunky, hence why I got an aftermarket part, but I'll show that and compare that in a little bit. But yeah, wings look pretty good. I think wings definitely is one of those parts that looks good riveted up. I don't know how extensive the riveting detail is on a C202, but we'll get there when we get to our references in a couple minutes. Next up is the lower wing, and then all the landing gear parts. Yeah, I think everything here is landing gear bay and landing gear parts. A lot of ejector pin marks to deal with in here, but some of them might not be visible. But we'll just definitely have to do some test fitting and see how things cover up or don't cover up. This is a bad part. This is the part of the gear bay detail, and it's just pockmarked with ejector pin marks. I think I see 5 of them on this one piece, and a part that will be seen. Now, sure, it's underneath the plane, but still, something that we shouldn't have to deal with. But then again, 1990s tooling, modern tooling has definitely changed the game. So we're happy that we have this kit available to us. There's not many in 1/48 on the market, besides a rebox this that Eduard did a couple years ago. Last couple small sprues. This is the bottom of the nose, spinner cone. These are the different type of tail wheel housing, another tail wheel, and then these are the exhaust stacks, which are kind of pathetic looking. But in this kit, from my experience, this was the hard part that didn't fit, was this little nose area that they added on late. Because there is a different type of nose for the 205s, which the 202 and the 205 are basically the same plane, but a little bit longer and a couple little things there. So not completely the same, so for rivet counters out there, don't harass me too hard about that. And then antenna and another scoop for the radiator. Small sprue there. And then there are 2 more sprues that are duplicates that have the props. And I don't know what this long hydraulic, that must be something for the landing gear, I guess. And then the landing gear wheel itself, which unfortunately there's 2 ejector pin marks. There's a sink mark on the bottom of it. One side looks good, the other one doesn't. I know that there's a shoe that mounts on this, but it's not flattened out or anything. I do like the fact that these are individual prop blades, because I like to paint things separately so I can keep these separate and install them later, so that's huge. So there's 2 of those. And then lastly is the clear part, and I will do the typical YouTuber model builder and cut this open on screen because I forgot to do it. And the unfortunate thing, like I said, with the packaging that Hasegawa uses, everything's just clumped in that bag. And all of these parts have been they're not broken, but they've been moved around enough where it's gonna be very hard to see. But right here, the sprue gate has caused a little distortion to the plastic. It's very close to the frame. I don't know how visible it will be. Luckily, there's 2 of them for the earliest type windscreen and the later type. I'm not quite sure which one. Hopefully, it's the later type because that's the one that's less effective. But even the canopy itself has a little distortion. But that one will be easier because it has a framework that I can work on. The gun sight is not much to call home about. Luckily, the Eduard Photo-Etch set that I have has a replacement glass piece for it, but still you have to use the base. But I think adding the glass will be a little bit better solution. But, not much in terms of clear glass. It's sad that they got affected the way they did in the bags. We'll have to be very careful with those since they are fragile. So, yeah, that's all the kit parts. I was very surprised when I opened this that the decals are actually printed by Cartograph. You see here 1995 and printed by Cartograph. That is incredibly shocking to me because I have always hated Hasegawa decals. They've just always given me issues. So I know I bought a whole extensive decal set because I have trust issues when it comes to decals and kit manufacturers. I just don't trust a lot of kit manufacturers' decals. But seeing that these are Cartograph, maybe I'll use some of them, compare them to some of these national insignias, look a little bit better. Some of the placard details may look better. but it's nice to see a set of Hasegawa cartograph decals in their kit boxing. Then last up is the directions. Typical Hasegawa kind of format of directions. It's a fold out. It's not a huge kit, so it's not a huge set of directions, but you get this kind of fold out look. Typical, all their color call outs are Gunze, and it's pretty easy to read. And some of these diagrams here, like this one right here, it gets a little confusing because they just kind of throw all these tiny parts out at the same time. But I actually like Hasegawa's decals, or not decals, their instruction book. I read them well. There's your typical, sprue overview and what parts you'll need and not use. And then there's a couple schemes here. One with the kind of splotchy scheme and the smoke ring camo, which I'm planning on doing one with the smoke ring camo. I've always thought it was an interesting scheme. I just never had the balls to go about and doing it. But I think I have a good way that I'm going to go do the smoke ring camouflage scheme. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So let me, I'll put some of the stuff away. I'll pull out some of the aftermarket, and then we'll compare some of the kit parts to the aftermarket and just kind of compare the detail. Okay, for some of the aftermarket I'm going to use, we'll start out with some Eduard stuff. This is their Photo-Etch set. It pretty much just covers cockpit stuff. It has some seat belts, which the C202 had a very interesting harness system that had these chains and stuff in it. And so that's going to be pretty interesting. Some of the other aftermarket, some of the resin stuff has a better representation of this molded in. So we'll have to do a little compare and contrast to see what we're going to use. But it also has instrument panel, which mainly the reason why I get it. Some of the clear acetate, so you could add the gun sight, and then some radio detail and some other little levers, switches, and other things like that. So a small little set, which will add some nice detail to the cockpit. Also from Eduard is Eduard mask set. I can't recommend these enough. It just makes things simple and easy. I know it's easy sometimes for people just to pull out some mask tape and cut on their own. This canopy is not that intricate, but still time saver with using some masks. We also have this Eduard Brassin set, which is for the undercarriage bay, which, like I said, there's a lot of sink marks and stuff like that. This is a pretty easy resin set to go with. Only a few pieces, but a lot more detailed, and there's a fret of Photo-Etch in there as well. Some of these resin parts can be kind of difficult to remove from the casting block because they are thin and fragile, but definitely going to look the part when it gets in there. So I have that. Also from Eduard is a set of exhaust sacks. These are really nicely to scale. They're hollow. They have all the weld seams on it. These look perfect, especially compared to the kit parts, which are terrible. These are lovely. I also have another one from another company that we can pair with, but so far, just looking at these are the front runners right here from Eduard. From Quickboost, I have the air intake, which is kind of I wouldn't say a focal point, but it definitely stands out on the C202s. And the molded one looks okay, but this one has, it's open on the end. It looks really nice, and we'll compare that in a couple minutes. These are some Ares tires. These things are beautiful. They have they say Pirelli on them. For airplanes, that has an individual tail wheel. These are just awesome looking. These are gorgeous. And they also come with a mask set on the other side, which is great. So those are looking pretty good. And then from our friends up in Canada at Ultracast, I got some of their radial tread tires, which, they're nice. They're better than the kit parts, but they're not better than the Era set right now. They just look kind of okay. They're well molded. All Ultracast stuff is really well molded. I highly recommend a lot of their resin stuff. They're just not as good as the Ares set. These are the resin exhausts. Something about these, they just don't look as good as Eduard's. Still beautifully cast. I don't know, they kind of look too small. They look like they're almost 72nd scale, but I know they're the right size. That I measured them, but you know, we'll see. We'll compare them. And then I have 2 sets of seats, and mainly I got 2 sets of seats because I don't know if I'm going to use the Photo-Etch seatbelt or if I'm going to use the one with the harness. So the harness is in here. It looks lovely, beautifully cast. This is why I love Ultracast seats. They always look great. This looks to scale. It's not chonky like the kit part, and the detailing on the actual seatbelts is wonderful. So, and then this one obviously doesn't have any seatbelt, so we could use the Photo-Etch, and we can do that. So what will probably happen is I'm not going to use the kit seat at all. It's already been decided. What I'll probably do is I'll probably, you know, cut this one, get it all prepped and painted with the harnesses, and then I'll add the harnesses on this one. We'll see which one looks best, and then we'll swap it into the cockpit when we're done. So those 2 seats. And then, like I said, this is a very, very comprehensive set of decals for the 202. There are 35 different schemes, including the one that I'm eyeballing on. I still not 100% sure if I'm going to pick the scheme I want to do. Like I said, I want to do a smoke ring camouflage, so there are probably 10 options in this decal set with smoke rings, so I just have to figure out which one I want to do. But, you know, these are actually printed by Cartograph. It's the Sky models. These are all printed by Cartograph in Italy. These look great. You know, they're all kind of smashed together on this one sheet, and there's a correction sheet in here. So I don't really like this layout because you kind of get lost trying to find things. But it's very comprehensive. There's a lot of good stuff on here, and you know, it's great if I decide to build another 202 down the line, which could definitely happen because I think they're a pretty sexy plane. So we got this. So let me get some things arranged here. I'll cut some of these aftermarket out of the bags, and then we'll compare them to the kit parts, and then we'll take a look and see how they are. Sorry about the glare on these, but you know, all the lights I have in here kind of blow things out. But you can never have too many good sources of references. So for this build, I'm going to be using this nice Squadron book, and then this Top Drawings C.202 book from Kagero. You know, I'll start out with this book here. This is an old book. This was published in 1980 by Squadron. But what I've learned kind of looking on the internet for good pictures of C202s, a lot of them are not very good. And what I've learned is it seems like a lot of them are photographed or copied right out of this book. But you know, I don't know if you've ever gone through a Squadron book, but it starts about the introduction, why it was made, the prototypes, different types of noses, and it goes through all the development cycle. So it goes all the way from the prototype to the 207, which everything kind of branched off of it. So it went from C202 to 207 with the 205 in between. You know, how many were made. So if you're really into the history of an airplane, these books are great if you can find them. I found this one. I got this for $3.95 on Amazon. I think the shipping actually costs more than the actual book, which is unfortunate. But you can find these books out there. And I know Squadron's getting back into kind of producing more as they're kind of kindling their business. But these are great little books. And the best thing about this is, you know, you get these line drawings. Unfortunately, these line drawings don't have any rivet detail. But, you know, line drawings are always good to have, and they're a good reference. This looks like it's actually 1/48 scale. It doesn't say on here what the scale is. But it, you know, talks about the 202s in Africa and 202s in Malta and in the defense of Italy and Sicily and all that kind of stuff. Here's it is over Malta, and there's a lot of great schemes. This talks about the different types of canopies. So, you know, the later type canopy with the armor, the early type which didn't have the armor. So, you know, it's good to, you know, check your references. And I'm lucky enough where the plane that I'm looking to build is actually included in this, and here it is right here. So this is Sergeant Ennio Tarantola with his Dai Banana, which means go banana, markings on the side of the cowl. And, you know, there he is, and here's the tail. He actually has 7 Spitfire silhouettes painted on the rudder. And all those decals are included in that decal set that I have. So it's good to see. And the decal set is actually incorrect. When they show his plane, it shows it with the splotch camouflage. And if you clearly look at the references here, this has the smoke ring camouflage. So, it's good to check your references and see what you have. There's usually in all these Squadron books a section with color callouts or color profiles, so you can see all these different types. There's the all green, there's the desert with the splotches, there's the desert with the green splotches. I've always really liked this dark green with the brown splotches as well. That would be, if I built another one, I'd do it in that camouflage. And then we got different types of smoke rings. There's the thin smoke rings, there's the chunky ones, and then later on when here's a capture, or not a capture, now in German hands, so nice little color profiles. And you continue on the book, and now, when they sent Italian pilots into Russia to do some fighting, so you got a little section for that. In Tunisia, this is the Venturi tubes I was talking about there. So those are going to be a part that are on the kit that are a little chonky in the kit parts. They'll have to be thinned out and hollowed out so they look the part. And then talks about the transition from the 202 to the 205. So different versions with different types of chin intakes instead of the belly intake, and talks about the 205 itself and the main difference from the 202 all the way down to the production 205, which was the last version. There's a couple 207s out there. Then it talks about the defense of Italy. It talks about the different types of prop blade insignias. It's made by Breda, or these the Macchi propeller insignias. Actually, I don't know if those decals are included in either of the decal sets, but typically most line aircraft didn't have prop stenciling on them. They usually were worn off or painted over or replaced. And it shows all these different, tail bands, which there's this black cat. There's some pretty cool looking tail band unit squadron stuff. And then it talks about the Italians flying with the Allies later on in the war. And the change of their markings and the landing gear. There's a lot of good information in this book. This is what we're talking about, the tail wheel changes. So those parts are included in the kit, so you can do the proper one. And then this is what I was talking about with the different types of wings and the gun stuff, and then final developments of the plane, and then some more color photos on the back. So these Squadron books are very nice. They're great for references. There's a couple different versions of Macchi, or not Macchi books, but these Squadron books. Some of them say, the plane in action, which is, you get a lot of these black and white photos. And there's other ones that say like Macchi walk around, where they actually do a walk around of a museum piece, or maybe one that's still flying. And they do a walk around the plane, and they show, inside the gear bay. They show the cannon detail. They show radiator intakes and all that kind of stuff. So just know, if you do find some of these books, what in action means and what walk around means. That's a little different. So just keep an eye out for that. And then the other reference book I'm going to use is this Kagero Top Drawing Special Edition. This is number 71, which covers the 202. I found out about these guys, and I bought one of their books for my Brewster Buffalo because I was missing a lot of kind of information for the Dash 3 version. And this, I was told, would have a nice comprehensive listing of all the changes and differences in between models. And much to my surprise, it was very intensive in here. I did not know this came with actually a set of canopy and wheel mats for the Hasegawa kit. So I have a backup if I need it, which is very nice. This is actually for 1/72nd scale. So not going to be using that because I am building 148. But these books are relatively new. This one is published in... Doesn't say. But it's a relatively new book. Maybe it says on the back here. Not quite sure, but it's relatively new. So in here, it gives kind of the general history of it, and then you get a lot of great line drawings. This has all the rivet detail on it. This is the prototype version right here, and then it gives front views, which a lot of, when you find stuff, you don't get front views, which is important. But all these line drawings are great. all the rivet detail, cross-section stuff for the wings. This is the version that doesn't have the antenna. This is the series 1 through 3 version with all the rivet detail and the big cowling on the bottom of the nose. And it tells you that this is 1/32nd scale at the bottom of the sheet too, which is very helpful because then I can just copy it and scale it down if I decide to do rivet detailing. Like I said, I'm still on the fence about that. This is the 202 series 4. And then look at this one, even has the cowling removed, so you can see the engine in here and all, where the engine separation lines would be. And this is the one that has a Daimler-Benz DB605 engine in it, so it has a little bit different of a cross section. And then you get some color profiles here. This is the prototype. This is a Series 3. And then there's one with the smoke ring and the blotch camo. And there's that dark green one that I really like. I think all of these look great in their camouflage schemes. I think it's a sexy looking airplane. It kind of reminds me of like a small little Italian car with its kind of how its canopy kind of bubbles out, and it's a neat looking plane. And then some other camouflage schemes here. And then when you get into here, it talks about the different types of machine guns, what kind of stores you could carry on the wing, the wing cross-section and structures of the 202, common parts between the 200 and the 202, the different types of skin that was on it. So like where fabric was or where metal was, which is helpful if you're doing weathering. You want to make sure you're not, putting chipping fluid on a part that is, wood. It's not going to be sprayed in a metal color and that kind of stuff. And then it has different types of the instrument panels for the different series, the type of gun sight for the different series, and this is a German remake copy. This is the original Italian version, and then the different types of engine mounts. Here's the tail wheels that I was talking about earlier. So pretty cool that it has that information in it, and then engine and prop blades. The Alfa Romero and the DB601, the DB605s, and a couple Alfa Romeros. And so it has all that information in it. The types of propellers, the type of canopy, the canopy framing, the type of antenna. This is the later type with the armor. So all this stuff is laid out for you so you can get really good detailed pictures of it. And then this is probably my favorite part of these books is it starts with the prototype, and then as it goes to each diagram, it tells you what was added and subtracted to each of the improvements. So it'd be like, okay, we added a new windscreen, or we removed a venturi tube to underneath the fuselage, or we added a different type of antenna. So it's pretty cool. This is what I really liked about when I was building my Buffalo, is that I could go and see that the Dash 1 had this, and then when we got to the Dash 3, what had been removed and redacted, what had been changed a little bit. So it's pretty cool that they have this. And like here, this is where the seat got changed. This is the armor, cockpit seat, and the shape of it changed. So it gives you that kind of information. And like I said, it goes all the way. These are the DB powered, the ones where they added the bombs and the external racks on the wings. Even when they removed the machine guns from the wings due to operational issues. So it's cool to see the step-by-step progression from prototype to the final model. And then these are line drawings. These are actually in 1/48 scale, which is nice. So we got 1/48 scale on the side view, top view, bottom view. The riveting detail is quite extensive. I don't know if I'm going to want to tackle that with a Ponce wheel, but it doesn't look too bad, but it is quite extensive. Definitely unique. And then they have scale drawing for 1/72nd scale, but this doesn't include any rivet detail because I don't know if is riveting in 1/72nd scale a thing. I don't know. I don't dabble in the Braille scale, but it's good to see that they have 1/48 scale stuff for rivet detail stuff. But yeah, it's a great little reference book. I think I got this for $15 off of a vendor on Amazon, and I got free shipping on it because I have Prime, which is great. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to hunt some of these down, I definitely recommend. They do mainly aircraft. They also have a whole book line of ships. They have some tanks, but these are nice little books for the $15, $13 range. You know, depending on where you live, it might be a little more expensive. But these come from Poland, I believe. Or Czech, Poland. Let's see. Let's not just say what we think. Yeah, Poland. These are published in Poland. So if you can find these, give them a look. If you can find, I forgot to talk about this. This was in there as well. This is a kind of like a centerfold, sexy cutout for things. So this is the 202, showing all of its engine stuff. Like I said, I'm not technical what goes on the inside, but whole diagram there. This is 1/24 scale. It's a big old plane at 1/24 scale, man. And then on the back is the internal ribbing detail and all the internal ribbing for the wings, which is pretty cool if you're going to scratch build some stuff. This one's just called structure drawings. This is, what is this one called? Oh, this is anti-sand equipment. So this must be all the filtration systems and stuff they added on while the plane was parked, so it looks like all FOD covers and stuff like that. And then this one just looks like standard line drawing in 1/24 scale. So yeah, that's the top and bottom of the 202 in 1/24 scale. And then what we got here? This is pretty cool. This is what it looks like on stands and jacks during maintenance. So if you're maybe wanting to do the ultimate scratch build and take it all apart and have all the ribbing exposed and throw it up on some jacks, this is the book for you. Not in my wheelhouse, not interested in that, but hey, if you wanted that kind of stuff, here it is in 1/24 scale, which is great that they have that extra detail for you to look at. So yeah, that's included in this book as well, along with this set of 1/72 scale masks. So good stuff, top stuff from Top Drawings by Kagero Publishing. So that's a good little book. So this is the pilot that I'm going to build his plane, and this is Sergeant Ennio Tarantola of the 153rd Squadron 51 Stormo. And on the cal here, it's hard to see, but it says Die Banana, which means go banana in Italian. Apparently, or not apparently, he was a banana vendor before the war, and he also imported bananas as well. So that's why it says go banana on his aircraft. But he's credited with 11 destroyed airplanes, 4 shared, 1 probable, and 1 destroyed in a ship at sea. He actually flew in Spain during the Spanish Civil War, and then he flew in Italy, where he claimed 2 Tomahawks. Looks like he has 7 Spitfires and 1 P-40 and 3 P-38s. So the guy definitely put in some work in his flying career. And he flew, at the early phases, he flew a Fiat CR-32. He threw a Fiat G50 BIS. And then he flew the C.202s, and then he ended his career in a 205 with his last kill coming in February of 1943. So I think he's a pretty interesting pilot to work a build around. I think his aircraft looks pretty cool in the photos I've seen of it. Like I said, I want to do a plane with smoke ring camouflage, and he has smoke rings, and they look like smoke rings that I could replicate with an airbrush. So we'll go and start doing a little more research. These are the only 2 photos I've seen of him with his plane. There's a couple more of him out there on the internet that I've come across, but we'll do a little bit more research about his plane and get as much detail about how his plane might have looked. Sure, we might have to use some of our artistic license to do a couple things, but yeah, I always like building planes based around the pilot. My last build with the Hurricane was built around a pilot, Karel Kudawasher, and it'll be nice to build Ennio's plane and do it some justice. So, yep, we'll get working on this.